Welcome everybody to this meeting of Strategy and Resources Committee in December. Quick reminder, make sure your mobile phones are switched off please or silenced. There are members of the public press attending this meeting virtually. Can I please ask those attending virtually to switch off the microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the Council's YouTube channel. And a reminder for councillors to ensure that those attending virtually and in person can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first names. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, officers will direct you to the nearest exit from the meeting room onto the car park. Thank you. So we'll go on to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, proceed apologies for absence from councillors Bell, Hunt, Milton and Wilkinson.
Thank you. Any other apologies? Okay, will we accept those apologies? Yeah. Item 2, to approve the correct record of minutes of the meeting held on 4th of November. Any issues, any questions on those minutes?
I move to.
Anybody second those minutes? Councillor Lever, all those in favour of the minutes? Thank you. Item 3, items brought forward. No, I don't think there are any items. I've been away for a week, I only got back last night, so I'm not fully up to date. I don't think there's any other items, are there? Ariana?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest.
Just one from me on item 7, the presentation from the AONB. I understand there's nothing for decision on that, but just to let members know, my company worked for the Lord Devon AONB for 10, 15 years, something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other declaration of interest? Councillor Crabb?
I have been doing some work at Broughton, but I would say it's probably fair to say I think it's going to affect the results of anything today, but.
Okay, thank you. Any other declaration of interest? Simon?
Clarify that one.
Is it worth raising that under, because that's a part BBI item, isn't it? So perhaps it's best to raise that one when we get to that point.
Okay. Okay. Okay, agree the agenda between part A and part B. Everybody in agreement with that? John? Were you going to say something then?
No, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something. Oh.
Just say you have got part B. So
Yeah, we have got part B. Everybody in agreement with that? Thank you. Okay, I'm moving to part A, Landmark Theatre updates, item 6. This is you, is it? Sarah Bain? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So this morning we welcome Paul Jetson, the CEO, Victoria Yates, Head of Finance, and Ben Lyons-Ross, Head of Talent and Participation from Landmark Theatres to provide us with a report and update. As members are aware, we entered into contract with them in 2019 to operate both the Landmark Theatre in Ilfracombe and the Queen's Theatre in Barnstaple. That includes a subsidy from ourselves. I and the team meet them monthly and receive quarterly reports related to that contract, as well as an annual one. And with that, they report on their performance related to performance and facility standards. They came and reported to you probably about 18 months ago now, and this is to do so again. As members will be aware, it's been and continues to be a challenging time for the sector. I'm sure they'll touch on that, but they continue to do well. From North Devon Council's perspective, there's been capital investment in both theatres. So we have completed the upgrade to the roof at the Queen's Theatre, and just very recently the fire alarm at the Landmark Theatre in Ilfracombe. There is a Salex bid that's just been submitted for the Landmark Theatre in Ilfracombe related to upgrading heating. And we're working increasingly closely with the theatre on marketing. But I think now I'll hand over to them to give me that report. Thank you.
Where do I come to? So, go to the front.
Yeah.
You want me to stand?
Do you want to sit there on the?
But I hit sit, stand, I don't mind. Is it better for me to be here?
You
That
can
one
be
click-
wherever you want to be, really.
That clicks it that way. Clicks it that way. I'll stand if that's all right.
Yeah.
Do I stand? Okay, so we've got 15 minutes, haven't we? Is it 15 minutes?
We'll send you the
Yeah. Okay, just want to, I don't want to talk my colleagues out. It's always awful if you go first and they have to do their bit in 1 minute and what they're saying is what material and anything that I'll say. I'm going to set the scene by talking a bit about the purpose of the organisation. And this is an organisation which is funded by the Arts Council. Landmark is the largest new entry to the current portfolio, which is a significant investment. We work across two places, North Devon and Peterborough, and we're built to grow. In fact, we may be we may well be in the process of growing the business. So, what are we for? We're for to deliver the highest quality theatre to the widest demographic in the least engaged places in England. That's the purpose of the organisation. There's a subset to that purpose. I want to talk about 5 things, if I can remember all 5 of them. The first is a lack of productivity and jobs in the sector outside London. The sector's shrunk, and it's shrunk mainly through risk mitigation in the producing or the active making sector, and that's taken jobs out with it. The second area is an area of disproportionality. The access to the arts is quite simply not fair in this country. Some people have much more access to it than others, and that is place-based. And these are issues that Arts Council is attempting to address, and in part attempting to address it through our organisation. The third thing that we look at is roots into the profession, the provision of effective training. The fourth thing that and particularly building skill with the places that we work. We want to work with partners to create sticky, high-skilled jobs in places where we work around our areas of speciality. And we've moved into digital as well as live. And we've done that here, which Ben will probably talk to you about later. The next, the number 4 is to do with the city environment. We want to make a contribution to places not shutting at 6. We want to we want to be instrumental in city centre regeneration, and we want to do it by making our buildings fuller and making the audiences within those buildings more diverse and more representative of the audience outside those buildings. And last but not least, we're Last but not least, we've noticed the research on loneliness. We're in touch with the potential for a loneliness epidemic, and so we increasingly think of what we do, which is theatre, in a broader context, and something that Ben will introduce you to, providing I don't talk for too long. Is a set of attitudes that we're developing to that problem. I directed for the first time with the company this year, and I did a production of Rent. We revived Rent, which actually it's sadly may not be fulfilled, but it was offered a transfer. It did rather well, and I think one of the reasons why it resonated is because of the very, very strong ethos of community in the piece, and it's a wonderful piece, but it's got this community against all odds at the centre of it. And I think people found that a very powerful point of relationship, because I think that I'm right in saying that 40% of people under the age of 20 say that they have experienced loneliness at some point in their lives. So that's us. Don't we look splendid? And I'm going to move on from that to just talk briefly about the programme, because this is, after all, it's what we're for. Fundamentally, we're for two sorts of programme. We're for the programme that happens in the theatre, and we're for the programme that he delivers, then delivers. Two sorts of programme. The programme within talent and participation, and the programme on stage. So the commercial programme, the first set, that's or as I sometimes call it, I wish it was slightly more commercial, or why isn't it commercial programme? And the problem here is that the Queen's isn't big enough, and the get-in isn't good enough, and the stage is too small. Now, we've had some success in starting to shoehorn product up here, and I hope very much that there's something on that slide which I've been trying to get up here for 2 years, and I think finally I've twisted the arm of the person whose item it is, and it is going to come. We are getting some increase in week-long commercial work up here. The reason we're doing it is we're getting it into the big theatre in Peterborough, which, believe me, has its own problems, and we're selling enough tickets for them, and then we're saying, will you come up here? And they're saying no. And then we're saying, will you come up here? And they're saying no. And then we're saying, will you get the idea? Also, one of the points of rent is what we're doing. Our bigger risks around our creative programme will be programme that can play main house in both theatres. So we're looking to do what I call Play Plus, which is a play that 500 people will come and see. Not a lot of them around at the moment. So that's how we're commissioning to find that work, which we're going to develop. And also we're doing music theatre. And obviously we're doing it, so it'll be in both places and any other places that we run. The next set is the curated programme. This is, if you like, the arty stuff, art form development. The best result we've had with you guys here is, without doubt, with Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. And so what I'm trying to do with them is get them to come more. Why aren't they there? Yes, they are. So I was with Dougie the other day. I'm going to get the kids' concert in this year. We'll try and get moved to 2 visits a year. They're selling without any trouble. The classical music audience is back in the Queen's. Yippee! They've got a bit of money. Tend to buy a ticket for a play as well. Yippee! So this is, if you like, this is the posh kit. The National Theatre have been very supportive to us. One of the reasons why we've been able to develop a really top-notch schools offer quickly is because the National have partnered with us, and that's why we've had national schools touring, and also Speak Up, which is an incredibly generously funded programme that's run in North Devon. Extremely unusual to have that level of support. So if you like, this is the good kit, this is the posh kit. I have to sell it, I have to get people coming to it. Remember to tell people that when the posh kit is on, they need to come and bring their family and their extended family, because otherwise I can't endlessly bring it back. And this is a significant place where I put my subsidy. I put subsidy behind the programme for you to enjoy it and consume it. And the more you consume it, the more I can pull the subsidy back. Without subsidy, it ain't coming. Simple as that. So, last bit, and then I think it's time for me to shut up. A bit over time, sorry, creative programme. Just to point out that we've grown a panto business. It's a particular sort of panto business. Painted sets, traditional panto. It will be moving into the Queen's from next year. The current arrangement will finish this year. not wishing to criticise anybody else, but it's very important to hold the Panto slot because it's your Christmas slot. It's a place where people most come to the theatre for the first time, and it's the place where you can be most generous with basically targeted free tickets. Right, I'm going to hand over. I've done the outline. I'm now going to hand over to all the things that we have to do to make the business work. If you like the difficult bit,
Thanks, Paul.
that's the end of the easy bit.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Victoria Yates. I'm Head of Finance at Landmark Theatres. I joined the organisation at the end of January, so I'm fairly new to Landmark. When I joined, it was very clear that we had quite a lot of operational weakness, particularly in both finance and HR. And I have spent a lot of the last 10 months putting in place processes, introducing and strengthening processes. So, for example, we didn't have any monthly management accounts. We now have full accounts every month. We've now got a proper monthly reporting cycle, and we've got an annual budgeting cycle. So that's taken quite a lot of time to put in place, but I feel that we're a much stronger, robust organisation now from a financial perspective. We inherited a deficit, so our balance sheet at the end of March 2024 has liabilities of 1.4 million, so it's a negative balance sheet, and we knew that we had to do something about that, so we've worked extremely hard over the last 10 months and continue to do so. We implemented a programme which we called Lean In, where we looked to reduce costs and improve efficiencies across the organisation. We've introduced a zero-based budgeting system. So we've done a full review of all of our procurement, all of our contracts, and that's with the aim of saving between £300,000 and £400,000 a year on costs. We've looked at automating some of our processes, such as settlements. We've centralised our marketing team, who are now in Peterborough. We have centralised the management of our box office, and we've also reduced the number of hours that our box office is manned in person. So all of those things mean that hopefully our balance sheet will look a lot stronger in 12 months' time. The other thing that will considerably help improve the financial position is that we are about to formally separate with Celador. So our organisation was born out of Celador, and they are going to write off a debt that we owe to them of just over £600,000. So that will obviously significantly improve the position. And what we are aiming to do is by the end of March 2025, we are forecasting a very small loss, but we are still aiming to break even. But it will be a much improved position from last year, which was a £400,000 loss. As you know, and Paul's already alluded to, it's a really challenging market, poor economic conditions, a real pull on the leisure pound. It's not the first thing people think of when they get their monthly pay packet, but we are doing our best to bring new audiences to the theatre. We know that next year, as with every business, it's going to be really challenging. That increase in employers' NI, that higher than expected increase in national minimum wage will be difficult for us. To mitigate that, we are looking at diversifying our income. As Paul already said, we are producing our own panto. We're also producing panto for other organisations. So we are producing a panto this year for the Beam Theatre in Hertford. We're looking to grow that side of the business. We are also going to be growing our commercial hires. So on the days when the theatres aren't being used for our programme, we will look to have other commercial organisations in there. So we're looking at weddings, parties, conferences and so on. And we are working with a KTP associate to help us with that. That's a knowledge transfer partnership associate with Anglia Ruskin University. So he's helping us put together a business model for that. So we've got some good plans to launch that next year. And what we expect with all of this is within 3 years, so at the 31st of March 2028, we will have a positive balance sheet. And at that point, we will be able to commit to capital expenditure and investment in the theatres. Just one final point to make. So on the 1st of April this year, we became a charity. We changed our articles so that they became charitable, and we are in the process of applying for registered charity status. That will make a big difference to our finances as well, because we will be able to take advantage of grant funding and also supplier discounts in some areas. Okay, so that's the finance. I'm going to hand back over to Deb.
Hello everybody, I'm Ben. I am the head of talent and participation for Landmark Theatres. So the work that I look after is kind of concerned with the broader sort of skills training and participatory opportunities that we offer to our communities. I think it's fair to say that since we joined Arts Council's national portfolio, we've implemented quite a lot of developments in the context of talent and participation. We've delivered on our Landmark talent strategy and our Landmark participation strategy, and I'm going to be fairly summary as with the rest of this presentation around this, because in a short space of time, we've developed a lot of work that's designed to benefit the communities that we serve. So, for example, with our participation programme, we developed a schools partnership offer, which consists of sort of a year-long attachment for primary schools and secondary schools, which is based on workshop provision, CPD opportunities for teachers, and opportunities for children and young people to perform on our stages. Actually, last academic year, we partnered with 5 secondary schools and 4 primary schools from North Devon, and we delivered around 400 workshops and enabled nearly 1,200 children and young people to perform on our stages. Our participation programme is also concerned with our sort of broader kind of community engagement work. For example, we've developed a community decision makers panel. So we have a panel of people from our communities who meet with us on a regular basis. They give us feedback on our creative output and offer creative suggestions as well. They also will interrogate our programme on our buildings from an inclusivity and access perspective. And moving into next year, they're going to start kind of taking some curatorial responsibility as we work with them to curate their own event in one of our buildings. The idea behind our community decision makers panel is that we can make sure our programme is relevant to and reflective of the communities of North Devon. Our talent programme seeks to be a pipeline of creative opportunity for theatre professionals at every stage of their careers. So whether that's our early career arts training programme, which is designed for young people to sort of get those key fundamental skills to building a career in the arts, or whether that's sort of the top end of that pipeline as our Insight Associates programme, whereby we offer more established theatre makers in our areas an attachment to one of our produced outputs, where they can work alongside the lead creative and develop their sort of early sort of skills in making work at a larger scale. So for example, this year, 2 artists from North Devon were attached to the production of Rent, working directly with the lead creatives, getting kind of some fundamental skills in making work at a larger scale. It's not been without challenge. I don't think it'll surprise some of the people in this room that we've really struggled to engage with 16 to 25-year-olds outside of the context of sort of formal education or employment. What we have found, though, is that by broadening the sort of skills provision training that we can make available, we can sort of buck the trend on that. So last year, we successfully got funding to deliver a BFI Film Academy short course, which is a hands-on creative and technical filmmaking training, which we delivered to 20 young people from across North Devon. It was delivered by professional filmmakers, and we had a massive amount of applications for it. And actually what we found is that drove diversity within our participation kind of programs as well. So for example, that cohort in North Devon, 55% of the people who took part in it identified as disabled, 40% were from working class backgrounds, 15% were from the global majority, and 65% identified as women. You probably know this, but they're all characteristics that are currently underrepresented in the film industry. And as a result of us delivering the BFI Film Academy short course in North Devon, 2 of the young people immediately went on to get their first professional film credit in the industry, working on a short film in Manchester, and many have come back to our buildings to record performances and receive paid work in doing so. A fundamental development for us is the implementation of our flagship programme, the Welcome Weekender. The Welcome Weekender is a festival that's designed to welcome new artists and audiences into our buildings on their own terms and to celebrate and elevate the unique people and culture of North Devon. The idea behind the programme is that it's responsive to the North Devon cultural strategy and is sort of broadly accessible. So over the course of a long weekend in September this year, we delivered a programme of 23 live performances of early years work, of family shows, of work made by exciting local theatre companies, along with 2 outdoor film screenings, And the sort of idea is that it's going to drive new attendance to our buildings. Actually, 6 of the performances took place outside of our building or kind of in a landscape responsive kind of place. I don't know if you can see that there, but we had this amazing vertical dance performance sort of dangling off the side of the towers in the Landmark Theatre. And we felt like it was a real kind of creative success, but we've also noticed that it has had an impact on our wider community. For example, we worked with 4 of the companies participating to help them fundraise via Arts National Lottery project grants from Arts Council, totaling a further investment of around £140,000 coming into the area. Excluding our own casual staff and volunteers, the festival created paid work for 76 people from across the region and created 13 shadowing or work experience opportunities for young people and adults from the area. So well over 2,000 people joined us across the course of this weekend, and there was a real sort of palpable sense of sort of pride and excitement in the activity that was going on in the area. A woman who attended, who brought her small daughter, said to me that this makes me feel like there's a bright future in this place, which was really kind of, great to hear, because that's the sort of whole goal behind the festival, and it's also inspired some of our sort of strategy as we move forwards. So we're developing a strategy that we're calling the Artie Bank. This is focused around the Landmark Theatre in Ilfracombe to start with, and our ambition to make it a hub of culture and care within our community. Artie Bank is inspired by Multibanks, which I'm sure many people in this room know is an initiative that's designed to relieve poverty by making essential resources available to the people who most need them, with a sort of all under one roof kind of approach. So users of the Multibank can get their food along with their, bedding, essential sort of hygiene products or baby products. And the vision for Artie Bank is based on this principle, but with a free at the point of access cultural offer that's tied in as part of the service. We're really early into our sort of thinking around this and sort of building our sort of business planning and strategy for it, but we're asking some big questions like, what would it mean if coming to get a food parcel was also tied in with a live music offer or a cookery class? Or how could a warm bank offer coincide with the presentation of new work that's being developed in our building by local theatre makers? We're part of this federated theatre model that kind of has access to amazing skills and knowledge from across our sector. So how can we make our skills, spaces, people and resources available to smaller CICs or people in our community who we know are doing brilliant work? So as I said, we're early into our business planning for this, but we do have some great kind of foundational blocks to start with. So, for example, at the Welcome Weekender, all of our family work was made available for free. And we partnered with organisations like Action for Children to make sure that the families who would most benefit from this free offer were able to access it. Likewise, in a couple of weeks' time, we're doing a special Christmas event for people who are at risk of facing social isolation over the holidays. So we've collaborated with North Devon Homes, Sunrise Diversity, Encompass Southwest and Age Concern, and we're inviting people to come and join us for a special afternoon of carols, hot drinks and mince pies, and a free performance of Beauty and the Beast, this year's pantomime at the Queen's Theatre. So, it's early days on this strategy, but we're going to prioritise over the next 12 months, deepening our partnerships with other charities and service providers so that we can really interrogate the sense of utility within our building and fulfil our ambition to make it a hub for our community. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. You're up for questions.
I beg your pardon?
We can ask questions.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Members, any questions to any of the 3 presenters there? Councillor Lever?
Yes, thank you very much. Really interesting, and I think we're very lucky in North Devon to have 2 towns with their own theatres, and it certainly helps in terms of the sort of status that Barnstaple and Ilfracombe have in the region, that they're a town with a theatre and a cinema and all that sort of stuff. One of the things I was going to ask about is on the work that you're doing with young people. The Chief Executive and I were at a meeting last week where we were hearing a lot about issues around mental health with children. I was just wondering what your links with local schools are, particularly local primary schools, and getting children sort of involved in the arts.
Mm-hmm. So we do a significant amount of partnership working with primary schools and secondary schools. Interestingly, the Speak Up project that Paul mentioned before, which is a secondary school programme, But the idea behind that is that we kind of connect artists with a cohort of young people in a school, and they co-create a piece of work which is based around the thing that they really care about. So inevitably, mental health, loneliness, the impact of social media, isolation, those things are really kind of quite actively and creatively addressed in a sort of a safe environment in those spaces. And more often than not, actually sort of our sort of access points into schools are sort of via the Senko, or via the sort of PHSE sort of curriculum or provision. So we sort of deliver on quite a lot of that sort of area by nature of the context of sort of participating in actually the parts of the school that kind of most respond to the resources that we can offer.
Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Ricky Knight.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in the charitable status. Yeah, both increases your opportunities and in many respects can decrease them as well. But having said that, it probably means that you're able to make better connections with existing cultural opportunities in North Devon. I'm referring to the Beeford Centre, Theatre Fest, the Plough in Torrington, for instance. And I wonder to what extent that might be possible for better connections, so we don't keep repeating the same performances like national theatre productions on the 3 theatres at the same time. There you go. Sorry.
I think those connections already exist, and I don't think there's if there are examples of overlapping program, it's a mistake, and I think it's pretty rare. I can't imagine. I don't think I know of any recently. That's the first thing. And so far as charitable status, the main thing about charitable status is not to do with the connectivity with other organisations working in Devon. We're already well connected to those. It's to do with fundraising as much as anything else. That's particularly Trust and Foundation.
Thank you.
Councillor David Knight.
Yeah, I just was going to echo, it was a fantastic presentation. I'm trying to refrain from clapping. It's not appropriate in council meetings, but no, just as a curveball, we have a brand new car park and wayfinding for people coming through, and there are, I'm sure, some drip feed presentation spaces or advertising to get this message out there, because all these people that live in this town and visit that new car park, we want maybe some new, bright, big things, that are attracting younger people.
We would very much like to do that. Outdoor advertising is really important to us, and it's actually quite difficult to find outdoor advertising sites in Barnstable. So yes, please, and any way in which the council can help facilitate that process and make it easier for us to do so, we really appreciate it. And I also think that increasingly I want to be advertising the organisation as well as individual shows, because I think when we started that, you couldn't. And I'm actually I'm rewriting the business plan. The reason why I'm rewriting the business plan is not because the first one, it was a business plan, but it was a business plan for an organisation that didn't exist. I'm now writing a business plan for an organisation that does, so it can be much more detailed. Similarly, I think to start with, I could come here and say what we were going to do, but actually we hadn't done it, and now it's quite clear what we're doing, and I think that now it would be good to start to advertise that, and so as I say, moving towards advertising the organisation as opposed to the individual components of the organisation. So I'd be very interested in finding ways of doing that. Thank you.
Councillor Crum.
Thank you. Couple of questions here. I'll look through them very quickly. Some of us will remember the unfortunate history of the theatre. I'm just wondering, I presume, and I hope that all the people that are here are very confident that any split from Sellertalk, obviously you've got a massive organisation, and there's I know there's savings, if you like, 600,000, but does this now mean that you are a little bit more adrift? Is the risk increased? That's one question. And the second thing, I know you said you were looking at getting people into filmmaking and one thing or another, but I've been involved, and particularly with you, with the Coty, and they're trying to promote this idea of getting techs, people that know how to work a light bulb. This is quite complicated, and apparently there's a lot of people that are needed, and there's nobody going into that business. So they were trying to promote that. So is that something that you're picking up as well in your training?
If you take the second one, I'll take the first one. Actually, Selador is now a very small organisation. Okay. Without a particularly generous balance sheet. So it's a relatively small organisation, and it's not as big an organisation as it was before. Okay. That's one part of it. And the second part of it is I think that for both Selador and for Landmark, I think it will be strengthening to be separated because the organisations now have their purposes are now very different. Yeah, just
And yes, briefly, yeah, with that is in our strategy in terms of technical theatre skill provision. You're totally right. There's an absolute gap in the sort of jobs market for technicians at the moment. So one example of the work that we're doing is we're introducing a summer school program next year, and there's also going to be sort of a technical theatre boot camp, which is going to be kind of geared towards sort of young people who are really at that point of sort of have done a few bits of work experience, done a few things at school, and now they're sort of ready to sort of spend a week of kind of concentrated time with our team to sort of get to the point where they could then apply for that sort of entry level position in technical theatre. But yeah, and there's a broader sort of sector wide kind of campaign again spearheaded by our partners in National Theatre around sort of skills provision to really sort of address that sort of backstage technical gap in the market.
Thank you. John wanted to say something then. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a couple of the points that were raised. So in terms of the financial position, we've worked very closely with Victoria and the team at Landmark Theatres around the budgets they have, asking for those forward projections to be reassured that that negative balance sheet position, once the adjustment for Selador is done, reaches a positive balance sheet position in 3 years' time. Similarly, also Sarah Jane working very closely with the team around the marketing strategy. Again, making sure the marketing strategy aligns to things like our own cultural strategy, the work we're doing in the Future High Streets London project, make sure that these things aren't done in isolation. And we've also had conversations around how we can help with that marketing, that advertising, similarly with our hub provision and green labels around things that we can do to help and work alongside the team.
Thank you, John. Councillor Powers?
Yeah, Chair, I mean, Councillor Crabb mentioned about, it's been a long journey, really, sometimes a bit bumpy, but 25 years ago, we had a crumbling theatre in Barnstable, a semi-derelict theatre in Ilfracombe. So we were able to put in huge amounts of external funding. I say it's kind of been a bumpy ride, but in a way, I welcome this because it's bringing sort of like the connection and the control back sort of locally. And I think that's been a great success, even through that bumpy ride of the 25 years, that there are theatres and people feel that there are. I just wanted to ask about, you talked a bit about, the groups where you're touching base with people to see about the programme. And I just wonder whether there are plans, or could there be plans, to actually get a closer relationship with the community again. Because I think there is a lot of pride locally around both theatres. But when Selador took it on, it was a bit like it's being done to us rather than for us. And I just wonder whether we could think about how we could make that connection work more broadly across the community in North Devon. Not just the financial relationship with us, which is now cheap as chips, in my view. We get fantastic value for the money we're putting into the theatres. I'm going to problem with that. It's really just to sort of get that ownership back and that feeling that they're very much our theatres. And, I wonder whether we could just hear a bit about how you see the future now that you are more locally based.
I'll just start and I'll hand over. And I also wanted to say that this is a conversation I think should go on outside this room because it's quite a big conversation. So the basis on which the organisation that I've built works is it's a combination of the value of a group structure with an understanding of the need for being very connected to the places where you live and work. We deliver scale through this. We're a nationally funded organisation, a big new NPO, and we've got very big, very important partners as funders, including the National Theatre. Most organisations that's not usual, but that's one side of it, and that means that we have access to really quite unusually large creative resource. The other thing I think I'd point to is Artie Bank. That's to do with a really profound attempt to place a theatre and the arts in the centre of the community. And it's a community that it has a lot of struggle. And the reason why I'm confident that we can do it is because there's a tradition of working in that theatre, which is to do with a youth theatre and various other parts of it, which I when I started to come up here and pick the business apart, I kind of liked what I saw. And I think that the work that Ben and his team can start to do in Ilfracombe on Artibank could be something quite sector changing. That's why I'm invested in this. That's why I wanted to do it. And I think that it will do something very profound with culture. It'll make culture very, very relatable to the people who live around it, because it's all about them and it's all about the connectivity with them. So I kind of think perhaps partly watch this space, but we would like to, that conversation is an important conversation for us. And the ownership is, our intention is the ownership model will change.
Ben, I would just say that I would agree with that. And I think in operation, you know, we talk about pathways quite a lot in terms of take the community decision maker panel, for example. You know, that group will start as the cohort sort of doing what I've described, but you know, the ambition is that, you know, someone from that group might end up being a member of our board. Yeah. You know, somebody might go and get a job in our marketing department, for example. You know, when we invest in local artists, you know, they might come and do our early career arts training program, and then we might support them to make their first show. And actually, next year we're co-producing with a theatre company from North Devon called the Cook Ensemble. Last year we co-produced with Red Herrings. So the idea is that the more of those pathways that exist, the more that the kind of the stuff that starts out in the sort of community and our participation programs, where we're kind of interacting with a lot of people, it can then branch into the sort of decision-making structure within our organisation. So that's the idea behind sort of building a talent pipeline, if you like, that as people's kind of careers grow with us, we also benefit from all of that sort of information and shared decision-making as well.
Just take one more question, Councillor Caroline Lever.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentations, all three of you. I'm really happy that actually got management accounts now. I'm slightly concerned that that's something which is new. I really hope that an organisation that is properly run has to. I mean, how could anybody exist as an organisation without that sort of thing? And I think the move to charitable status will serve you well. I hope it does. The thing which I'm really interested in, thinking about how cultural activities support people coming into our town centres and support local businesses and so on and so forth, as well as all the benefits for actually people feeling better about the world in which they live and so on and so forth, is that I really wanted to comment on, I'm very happy to hear about the work that you're doing with Encompass and North Devon Homes, and I'm trying to deal with social isolation, because I think there are a large cohort of people in North Devon who actually they don't go to the theatre. They're not particularly going to think, National Theatre, I'm going to be doing that. But it's a really important cohort for us to be working with. And I'm struck by some of the similarities with Scott's Cinemas in Barnstaple, certainly. And again, with that link up with the national, the Royal Ballet, and that brings people in. I'm not sure it's necessarily the same cohort. So I really think for me, the absolutely crucial thing, and it's not really a question or a comment actually, is actually about the interconnectedness of the work that you do with other stuff that's going on. Because if I think about Barnstaple, and I suppose there is a question there, it is about what thoughts you may have about further connectivity with other stuff that's going on. I'm thinking of Barnstaple Fringe Theatre Fest, which is huge. It's absolutely huge.
But we host.
Yeah, but I suppose I'm wondering, do you have more plans? What plans would you like to do if you were able to do that?
I think that I think that the thing that's been important in talent is to establish an organisation which people start to come to and start to look towards as a place that they can be commissioned and they can be supported. And I think that that's where we are. We weren't there, but now we're there. The submission rate for all our programs has grown dramatically. People are coming and finding us. I think that's, to some extent, that's a natural process, but it's a process that wants to be encouraged. And I think that we already work with the other NPOs in North Devon, and they all have slightly different agendas, but we do work across that group. And as the largest one, we see it our role to provide a level of leadership within that group, and also to actually, frankly, be generous with our resources, because we're better resourced than the others. So we're doing all that, and we'll do more of it. I think that the other thing is to work a bit more effectively regionally. I was at a meeting of the large NPOs in the Southwest a couple of weeks ago with one of the deputy CEOs of Arts Council. There's a lot of there's talk, and there's the beginning of some action within a room plan about how we can be more effective in sharing program. I think that the conversation that I was having with Dougie at Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, I think that's emblematic of a series of conversations that I will be having, which is to do with how where there's clearly a desire for a particular art form, and at the moment there's some access to it, how we can actually increase that access, broaden it, and work in more imaginative ways. So, for instance, his schools program is a good schools program. They used to have good connectivity with schools in North Devon. Now they have none, and we will give it back to them. So I think that these sorts of conversations are material, and they tend to escalate activity. And hopefully that's what will happen. And so far as the management accounts are concerned, I mean, we inherited a part of a business that had grown very, very quickly and been very, very successful. Sometimes when businesses grow very, very quickly and are very, very successful, people don't necessarily quite catch up as they should do. I'm just saying that to contextualize. It's nothing to do with me. It's not. It's a process that believe me has been exhausting, and that's a polite phrase to sort out. But I'm happy that I have the team and the relationships to be able to do that. I appreciate the support of the officers of this council. I turned up with some very unpleasant figures, and they didn't immediately throw me out. And I hope that the organisation has increased credit for having actually sorted out those figures and continue to sort out those figures. And we will. We're absolutely determined. We all understand that however good the art is, if the operation isn't really on it and incredibly efficient, then it won't work. And also, longer term, I want to make changes to that building. I want a bigger stage. I want to put the flat floor back with retractable seating so we can do 1,000 standing. And I want the organisation to be in a position where I can come to you and others and say, look, come on. If you want to work with me on this, you can double the occupancy rate in that theatre because we can. But that's going to be expensive, and you're not going to take any notice of me if I have a lucky balance sheet. All right. So it's self-interest dictates that I must do that.
Thank you very much, the three of you, for coming. Very informative. In fact, I think you said it 18 months ago. Let's try and make it sooner next time. Very reach out.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, we'll move on.
We're shy.
Item 7. So to do is presenting this.
So I'm sorry, I can't.
Area of
understand what
outstanding
you're saying.
natural beauty. Item 7, we're on, Councillor Lever.
Thank you. It's really hard to hear you in this room.
Jack, people are coming out.
I didn't even hear that. I'm sorry, because I can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to introduce Jenny Carey-Wood from well, yeah, area of outstanding natural beauty rebranded to National Landscape, but Jenny will tell you all about that. And the changing, strengthening purpose of that organisation in light of legislative changes, together with an update on current priorities, the management plan that they deliver on our behalf, and funding for which North Devon Council contribute annually to the core budget. Jenny, thank you.
So I might stand in the corner here. Oh, yeah. Could you stand up there so we can see you? Oh, right, okay. If that's all right. People stand here, ideally.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. As Sarah Jane said, we've had a rebrand. So legally, we're still an area of outstanding natural beauty. That is the geographical designation. But the team and the partnership are now known as a national landscape. Just to show you where it does work. The quick geography. So we go all along the coast from the highland, the coastal streams down into the sea, from Exmoor National Park's boundary, all around the northern coast, along the surfing beaches, across the estuary, down through into Torridge, along the Abbotsham Cliffs, and then down to Hartland to the Cornish border. So a very weird geography. We've got a population of about 10,000 living inside the AONB, and we're very much a terrestrial designation. We don't do marine, we leave that to the Biosphere Partnership. And we go down to kind of high tide, really, in most areas. So the designation is because of the important sea cliffs. That's why the area was designated as nationally important. And the purpose of designating it is to conserve and enhance natural beauty. So that's our purpose, that's the team's purpose, that's the partnership's purpose. Natural beauty means the landscape, the wildlife, the geology, and the cultural heritage, so all the historic buildings within the AONB. And this definition of natural beauty, it has been defined in law, but the interpretation's a bit variable over the years. And obviously with the landscape side, we've got a lot of information there, the landscape character assessments, and we also have some special qualities that we've defined in agreement with everyone for our areas, special qualities like broad sandy beaches, dark skies, the downlands, etc. So just a very quick run through that. So we're overseen by a partnership. We have 26 members currently. So we've got the local planning authorities, we've got the statutory agencies like Natural England and the Environment Agency, etc. We've got key partners like the Biosphere Partnership and the National Park. And then we have a range of community organisations and individuals who represent the broader community interests, people who are interested in natural beauty. So the partnership has a sort of coordination and communication role, and their purpose is to work together to deliver the management plan for the area within the context of that purpose that I just talked about. We have a core team of just 3, so 2.5 of us, full-time equivalents. So we're a very small team. We're one of the smallest national landscapes in the country, so we have one of the smallest budgets. And the kind of work we cover is highlighted there. Obviously, we give planning advice to the local authorities on this interpretation of what natural beauty is and how to conserve and enhance it. We do a lot of promotion, engagement and connection. This is a nationally designated area. It's for the nation, it's for locals, it's for visitors. And I suppose the team acts as a kind of catalyst, involving cooperation, coordination. We're there to kind of make things happen. We don't always do it ourselves. We've got other people on that partnership who deliver much more practical work according to their specialities. We do a lot of our work using external funding, using projects. As everyone knows, that's where all the funding is now. It's quite short term, quite challenging. So we've done a lot with heritage over the last few years. You're probably aware of the work that Dave Edgecombe did with the World War II structures, getting a lot of them listed and protected and better managed. And we've done work with the hill forts like Hillsborough around the coast to protect them. And obviously our work sort of flexes with what funding is available, like everyone's bit really. We also manage quite a few different grants. We have a very small grant scheme, and we've been over the last few years managing some bigger grant schemes that the government has handed us. And the final, perhaps the most important thing, is the team is involved in leading on reviewing the management plan. So this statutory plan is a statutory duty, for the local planning authorities to produce a plan and review it every 5 years. And that responsibility, as Sarah Jane said, is delegated to the team. So it's a material consideration in the local plan. The current plan was originally from 2019 to 2024. We have had an official extension to the end of 2025, partly because as a result of a number of policy and political changes over the last few years, there was a decision to issue new guidance about the management plan and to focus the work of the teams to address the ecological and climate emergencies that we're facing. So we had to wait a very long time for new guidance to come out from Natural England. We've now got that guidance. And the focus now is talked about all the time, is about nature, climate, people and place. So this management plan is for the place. It's got national targets and local targets. And the process is we produce a state of the A&B report using national and local data. The national data is actually cut to our boundary. It's the first time we've had a lot of that data, and it's been trickling through from different government agencies over the past 6 months. We're still getting some of it coming in. So hopefully we'll have a final version by the end of the year. We're then getting involved now in stakeholder consultations around thematic things like heritage, landscape, community engagement. And we've put out an online public survey. We've already had over 360 replies to that survey, and that's giving local people, visitors, other agencies and organisations, and please all do, I can send you the link probably, fill in that form. It's a chance for you to say what you think the priorities are in this area. We produced a formal draft for public consultation, and obviously with elections next year, we're going to have to wait probably till after the elections in May to issue that consultation. And then there's 3 or 4 months for the local planning authorities to sign off the report, because it's your report, and to get it signed off by Natural England and DEFRA. So the recent changes I mentioned that resulted in this new guidance to us. We had the Protected Landscapes Review that was carried out by Julian Glover in 2019 with a whole host of recommendations, and it was his idea to change the name. And half our community think it's great that we've got a new name that's a bit more comprehensible, and half the community think it's ridiculous. We've spent 20 years trying to get people to use AONB and understand what an area of outstanding natural beauty is. So I'm afraid the team kind of interspersed between the two terms. The Environmental Improvement Plan has got a load of targets in it, and some of those targets have now been passed on to us to deliver. Protected landscapes is the generic term for national parks and national landscapes. So obviously we've got 7 protected landscapes in Devon, we've got 5 national landscapes and 2 national parks. So we're one of the covered areas in the country. And these new targets are looking at increasing the amount of nature in our areas. So focusing on the triple SIs, but also all the different priority habitats we have around the area. Doing more for climate, so addressing greenhouse gas emissions and tree cover. Working with farmers to do more nature-friendly farming, using the new environmental land management schemes. Reducing the number of heritage sites at risk. I think the main one in the AONB in North Devon is the Saunton Litchets, the terraces behind Saunton Sam's Hotel, very overgrown and being damaged because of that growth. And finally, targets around accessibility of the area, physical accessibility of the area. So those targets are new. We've never had targets like that before, and they've got target dates between 2030 and 2042. And it's not for me to deliver, it's for the whole partnership across the working on those targets. So the other big change we've had is this Levelling Up and Regeneration Act that was passed at the end of last year, has a clause called Protected Landscapes that has changed the main duty. So previously, the planning authorities had to have regard for the areas of outstanding natural beauty. So you might look at a proposed development, some housing, a new business, and you might say, yes, the landscape's really important, but actually the economic or social needs override the landscape priority. I have to say, most of the time that doesn't happen. There's an enormous respect from our planning teams for the area of outstanding natural beauty, but sometimes it does. But this new purpose under this legislation, which we still haven't had government guidance on, which is why we haven't done a more detailed session on that, is to seek to further the statutory purpose. So that purpose to conserve and enhance natural beauty. And I think we're all interpreting this as slightly stronger, a slightly more active duty. It applies to all relevant authorities, not just the planning authorities. It applies to the water companies, the infrastructure, the broadband, all those organisations. And it applies to all your functions, not just planning. So it could have quite a major consequence, and that's why we are urgently waiting for the government guidance on this new legislation, because it could have quite a major impact. But it will take several years for that to kind of come into reality, I think. We've had a few planning inspectors' reports that have made reference to it, but not very much at the moment. So we would like you to get involved with this management plan process. We will obviously engage with a lot of the different officers in the local authorities. And it's your plan. It needs to complement the local plan, which obviously is being produced over the next few years. So you need to be happy with the content and what it's saying. So if some of you remember, that's what the plan looks like. I'm afraid we've hardly got any copies left now, but it's online on our website. So last slide, just to remind you about the funding, and we do appreciate the contribution that the local authorities make. So the deal is DEFRA funds 75% of our core costs on the basis that the three local authorities, the Devon County, North Devon and Torridge, fund the other 25%. So at the moment, you give £16,770 a year towards our core budget, and it brings in another 245,000 from DEFRA. We have had a massive budget hike the last few years. The previous government was throwing money at us to get a load of good news stories out. So we do tend to produce good news stories, which people like. So this is quite a lot higher. We've had the rather brutal truth that not only are they going to go back to the old core budget, which is about 200,000 between you all, but they're even threatening a 10% cut to that. And the landscapes review suggested that we should go from 6 million split between the 34 national landscapes up to 30 million, that we should have a lot more money to actually deliver what they want us to deliver, especially with these new targets. But just wanted to point out the additional funding that's come in. So we've had these farming grants. They're not actually grants for farming, which has really annoyed everyone. They're not for food production. They're about farmers doing more for nature, for climate, for people, and for the kind of historic culture of the area. We've got a whole programme giving those grants out, and this is just this year. We had some of that money last year and the year before. We also had some money to improve access to the coast and countryside, so we've been doing a few fairly minor, it's a very small amount of money for access improvements. And we got given an extra capital grant this year, and we bought a 9-seater people carrier, because one of the biggest barriers to people getting into the AONB is transport, and the cost of transport and the lack of transport. So we're hoping that will help us take all the work we do with different community groups, different organisations like Sunrise and Pickwell, with the refugee communities, with primary schools, etc., get more people out and about into the area. And particularly trying to work with 16 to 20-year-olds, which is really challenging, finding them, those who've got an interest in the environment and getting them out and about. And then finally, we usually have a couple of external projects. At the moment, we've got a big National Lottery Heritage Fund project called Finding Nature's Footprints. Did a lot of work in Torridge last year, and this year is more focused on Ilfracombe, Coombe Martin and Berry Narber. So we're going to be doing a lot more work up there It's a citizen science programme. It's about getting different audiences out into the AONB, so targeting the groups who don't usually get to benefit, improving our knowledge of what nature we've actually got, and starting to get communities and landowners doing more to support nature recovery. So the total of all that this year is about 700,000. And obviously having to manage all that grant has put a lot of pressure on the team. We have had some extra staff, and we've got a couple of project staff running this. So a lot of changes for us. And we're also trying to do the management plan review as well. So it's a very busy time. Interesting.
Thank you, Jenny. Questions, Councillor Lever?
Thank you. Thank you ever so much, Jenny, for all that. Lots going on, clearly, lots of changes in the wind. One of the things which clearly we as a district council are looking at the moment is reviewing the local plan. The new government having set us effectively doubling our housing targets. I just wondered if you could comment on the thinking about how that may impact on the AONB, not just in terms of housing development, but actually that balance between increasing access and increasing demand for access and protecting what is natural and beautiful.
I think we're very supportive of new housing within development boundaries that, you know, fit in with what has been agreed. And, you know, there's obviously a bit of infill here and there that's appropriate. I think what we're not happy is stuff that's out in the middle of nowhere. I think there's plenty of parts of North Devon that you could put new housing in that don't need to build all over the area about selling natural beauty. And obviously a lot of the AONB is your economic asset. It's where we produce food, where we have tourism, and that's a really, really important part of the economy up here. So I think it's a balance. We're not totally anti. Obviously, as people knew, we were quite concerned by the big development in Morthoe, that in the end got refused because that was a massive scale, and we're not. I think when it comes to major developments, which I think is over 11 units or something, that's where the legislation protects the area from major developments. We've been very supportive where there's community land trusts doing work, but they do tend to do it within the development boundary. So I appreciate there is a pressure. We don't say no to everything, and we are offering advice. We're not a statutory consultee. We're just advising you on what we think is appropriate from our perspective of protecting and conserving the landscape. So I think, you know, we are expecting some things to change. And that will be where we would play a role in putting into the local plan, along with other partners, to keep that balance between farming, nature, people, and the beauty of the place.
Thank you.
Councillor Crabb?
Cool. It wasn't my question, but something you said there, I'll just quickly. Did you say you're not a statutory consultee?
No, we're not.
Oh, remarkable. Okay. Your access to countryside, I'm sure you have done this, is you would be aware, of course, that most of the PCNs now run as social prescribing. I mean, that would be a natural fit, wouldn't it? You could just get literally, you know.
And we've tried quite hard over the last few years to work with green prescribing, and it's incredibly challenging. If you deliver stuff right in the towns, right where people live, I think that works. When you start trying to move people out into places they don't know, and the costs and issues of transport and the limited transport there is, it's really very challenging. There's a very small part of this Finding Nature's Footprint project that is trying to do some green prescribing work, working in Bideford and with Northern, and it's been really hard getting people to come out.
I think a lot of the booking ones do go about 2 or 3 miles out, but it's to a very specific.
Well, and again, there's some good stuff going on in Ilfracombe we don't need to duplicate. No. But if it would be useful for us to work more with those people, we'd be happy to look at that. But yeah, but it's the whole green prescribing thing has been a very slow burn, and it's been, even when schemes have run, it's been very hard to get people to come out and join it. I think our problem is we don't own or manage any land, so we don't have anything to offer, whereas some of the partners like the Wildlife Trust and the National Trust, obviously the National Trust own 11% of the AONB, they've got a lot more opportunity to offer that. So I think some of them have been a bit more successful in delivering that side of it. But yes, you're right, it's not just the physical access, it's actually those opportunities to get out and enjoy and experience green spaces.
Councillor Knight?
Councillor Lever touched on the increase in housing or potential increase in housing. And myself, I've been an avid walker, mountain biker, and have noticed even the time I've been here in North Devon, a big increase in kind of numbers of people that are in Stowe and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, if we're going to have a lot more housing, then there is going to be a lot more people thinking they can just walk off across that green field and, you know, roam around the headland, and how that's going to be tackled really, because obviously that infrastructure is owned by a landowner or county, and it's sporadic on how you get from A to B, but obviously a lot more people, then there's going to be a lot more kind of access, which isn't access, unadopted paths into nowhere. You know.
I think after COVID, you know, this area experienced an extreme level of pressure, and it clearly raised some of the issues we need to address. And one of the big challenges we're getting from DEFRA is to reach new audience and not just target, you know, middle class, fit, walking people, but reach people who don't normally get out in the coastal countryside, you know, just like the Landmark was talking about, their targets and ambitions. So I think we're better prepared in knowing some of the challenges we need to face. And interestingly, we've had some consultation meetings with farmers over the last couple of weeks about what do they want from the AONB. And one of their big messages was, A, they'd like us to do more education with primary school children particularly, so that everyone gets it, to understand how land is managed, how food is produced, and that when they go out in the countryside, they are walking on the food of the animal they're going to eat, and their dog is messing that land, and that's actually food they're walking on, and to, you know, to build respect and understanding. So that was one key message from the farmers. Could we do a lot more about that? And the other side was about putting interpretation materials and more information on all the footpaths and the coast path particularly, to explain why the land's being managed like this. Why is this looking so messy now? We like it to look nice and pristine, and it's like, well, we're trying to scrub up for nature and for particular species that are important. But also understand why it's being farmed in that way, why there's animals here at this time of year and there's not at another time of year, and actually use those opportunities when people are wandering around to get some of those messages across, not just the kind of behave, follow the countryside code, nagging them about their dogs, but actually helping them understand why the countryside is like it is and what's going on, and why there are some of those concerns or suggestions about how they might behave. So it's a real challenge to that, keeping that balance in a kind of positive way, because you're absolutely right, and we're seeing, you know, certain places with a lot more pressure now, particularly on the Charter Trail, for interesting, that conflict between cyclists and walkers and etc. and dogs.
Councillor Pound?
Yeah, Joe, it is about the planning context and how we work together, Jenny. Obviously, we're going to get more and more pressure now for renewables. And in the past, when we were faced with this, we did talk about sort of like buffer zones against the AONB, because very big wind turbines can have a big impact on a much bigger area than the area in which they're situated. So I wonder how you thought we should perhaps be, you know, do we need another bit of work that looks at that? The other thing is, I was there on like the local plan, it's not just housing which is putting pressure on the AONB, it's also tourism, as you just mentioned. And I know years ago we had that area of search very cleverly. We ended up with Hidden Valley and Stowford outside of the AONB, tucked away so they didn't impact on it. Whether, you know, the tourists, I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, we're full in terms of tourism. Well, we're not for the rest of the year. And whether there's a bit of work that needs to be done there to stop pressure. I mean, looking at what goes on in Woolacombe, well, Morto Parish and Georgetown, in terms of redevelopment of sites, you know, there isn't room probably for hotels to be built there. So, you know, is there any work that for the local plan that we could do there?
That might be useful. So starting with the renewables, Devon County is leading a piece of work, updating their guidance about renewables. So there is some work. I don't know if anybody from North Devon goes to the Landscape Policy Group.
Yeah.
So that group is updating the guidance across Devon, and I think there's been a lot of input from the protected landscapes about renewables. And I think we've all moved on from the kind of very anti attitude we had many years ago. And again, I think it's about a balance, and we're a bit more used to them. And obviously, we've had the big issues with the offshore wind power coming ashore at Saunton, and the one that will come in at Abersham to Albadiscot from Morocco. So those are being addressed, and I don't think there's a kind of saying no, never. It's about appropriate locations, and I think that's the thing with the AOB. It's about looking at a proposal or an opportunity in that precise location and understanding how can you mitigate it so that it doesn't have too high an adverse impact on the landscape. So I think the renewables, I think there is that work going on at the moment.
Isn't there a deficit there about, local involvement? I mean, we've got a huge interest in that coastline, and it's been done to us.
Well, I think that's just providing Devon providing a guidance note, if you like. So it's yes, it will be guidance, and that could feed into the local plan consultations to look into it. In terms of the tourism side, I know the Biosphere did quite a lot of work about hotspots and trying to spread the load away from hotspots. But I think one of the feedbacks we've been getting is that actually local people are quite fed up with the extension of the season because they feel they've got tourists there now from, Easter to the end of October, and all those nice quiet places they used to go are now quite busy all year round. But there are opportunities to improve some of that. But I think, that might be a useful piece of work to look at. How we manage that, how we manage those pressures across the area. But I think there's also other opportunities, recognising we have got all year tourism with the surfers, and maybe some things need to change, like the monitoring of water quality, so that we have year-round monitoring of that water, because we have people in the sea year-round, and that can be quite an adverse impact on them if the water's polluted, storm overflows and things. So I think there's been some quite big changes, and one of the extraordinary things in our new targets and outcomes, there is no reference to water quality at all in those targets. I think part of it is about national data sets, but we will have some local targets to address those. But yes, I think as part of the local planning consultation work, we would be very interested in working with you on those two topics. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Paris.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good to see you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Moving on, item 8 is Mark. Give his monthly update.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members. So we're moving into the last week of the first phase of the two-phase project. So the first phase is the building and construction works, drainage, etc. So we have a completion inspection on Friday, with the actual completion date for the works is Monday the 9th, but for obvious reasons we'll have a completion inspection on the Friday. We're looking good. Close of play on Friday. We're confident that we can complete on time. There'll be, as ever, one or two smaller jobs to finish off going into the week commencing the 9th, but there's nothing major there. One example is there's a row of lights in the process hall that we just want to lift up a few feet, because just to give a bit more clearance between the height of those and the new baler. When we saw 3D images, it's slightly bigger than, or slightly higher than we were inspecting, but nothing major. Probably the one that is going to be we're keeping a close watch on this week is just the slab in the new covered glass bay area. The concrete slab was laid on Friday, and we just need it to go off so that we can get some equipment in to go up high and install CCTV camera, carbon monoxide monitor, and a new extractor fan in that building. So we were hoping for warm, dry weather. We'll we'll see how we go with that. But we said with that, those works may creep into next week, but hopefully not. So yeah, looking good. And I think the biggest sort of issue for us, or something that we needed to be really sure of, was that we had all the construction work done in the process hall in good time for the arrival of the baler, which the good news is we're good there. That's a separate contract with a firm called Whitton Mills, construction contracts, obviously with Pierce Construction. So they'll be out in good time for the arrival of the baler kit, which starts to arrive in earnest on the 20th of December. They'll be in. I spoke to them last week. We'd programmed in a site inspection for them on the 13th. They may actually come in a little bit earlier because we're able to allow them in quicker, so they can come and have a look at the process hall and just check that they're happy with everything before their expensive kit starts arriving, ready for assembly of it in January. But yeah, all on track and all on schedule. And I think really what I'd just like to say is, if we could minute this, is just a big thank you to all of the waste and recycling team who've put up with a heck of a lot. I think we've all seen impact on our car park outside, which probably was fun again this morning, I would imagine. When all our lorries are back, or start arriving back sort of middle of the day here, there's obviously a construction site being down there, as well as the normal busy area. Our drivers have been absolutely brilliant in terms of their ability to park the trucks in increasingly tight spaces, and in particular the process hall staff and the yard staff have had to move areas of tipping and baling frequently as the project's gone on. So I'd like to say a big thank you to them, and even the office staff who've come upstairs and are looking forward to moving into their new office on December the 10th. So yeah, if we could just say a big thank you to them, I'd appreciate that. That's it, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. It sounds all very encouraging, that, and well done. Councillor Ricky,
I would move that. I know you didn't want it moved, but I would certainly move that as a proposal to thank the staff on our behalf. Because, thank you. Right. And certainly someone will second that.
Yeah, can we make that formal?
I'll second that, Chair.
All those in favour? Thank you. Just want to ask, any other questions or comments regarding what's being cleared on that? Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, item 9, Alison. Morning. I think
Good morning.
Morning, yes.
I've got a report to ask you to waive the full requirements of the contract procedure rules in order to create a suitable procurement route for the public art that we're commissioning for Barnstaple Town Centre. So the recommendation is that we restrict access to the tender opportunity to 10 artists selected on the basis of the quality of their previous work. The reason for this is that we have £200,000 that we're spending on public art within Barnstaple Town Centre. It's part of the Cultural Development Fund. There's an overall sum of £500,000, which is for all the Barnstaple Town Centre improvements. So that includes the wayfinding signage, new interpretation boards. There's also a further 100,000, which we're setting aside for 2 community art projects, one in Fortress and one in Gorrel, but that's not subject to this particular procurement. With this particular procurement, we're looking at individual, probably sculptural pieces. We haven't determined the detail of what we want, which makes it all quite tricky. The reason why we need to waive the regulations is that it's best practice within public art installations that you pay artists for the time that they put into making up their detailed proposals. So we've put aside £500 per artist as a kind of a bursary to enable them to work things up to a tendering standard. We can't obviously give £500 to every artist that might want to be part of this. So we instituted a process whereby we invited artists through public networks, specialist groups, to express their interest in the proposal, give us examples of their previous work. We had over 100 artists respond to that, and we had 63 submissions from artists who would like to be considered for this work. We're now going through a process of looking at their previous work and the suitability of their suggested work, in order to work that down to 10 that we will then ask to create full tenders, if that makes sense. In terms of what we're asking, we've been working with the town team for culture, which includes most of the artists and creative businesses from around Barnstaple, but also some community representatives and businesses. It's an open group, anyone can be part of it, and we've been doing it since the CDF project started. We've come up with a sort of a long list of 7 potential locations around the town and some ideas of themes that might go with those locations. So we're now in the process of writing up a formal ITT, which will include the details, obviously, of what it is that is required, not in terms of the actual art, but what the locations and the themes are, and also setting out the decision-making process when we do have those 10 tenders through, so that we can make sure that we're operating in a fair, transparent, proportionate way to the scale of the project. It is going to be quite complicated. As I said, the overall budget is £200,000. Now, one of the artists who says that he wants to tender is a chap called Michael Pinsky, who's an internationally known artist. If he were successful, the likelihood is that we would have one Michael Pinsky piece worth £200,000. But it may be that people don't like his submission and we end up with 3 or 4 smaller pieces. So we have to be very, very careful in how we write that ITT, how we set out the decision making, and we want to make sure that we incorporate advice from user groups, from the local community, possibly through a public exhibition. We need to demonstrate how that advice is going to be taken into the final decision that will be made at the end of this process. But for the time being, the recommendation is, can we waive parts of the procurement rules in order to be able to select those 10 initial artists to pay the £500 bursary to, in order to invite them to tender.
Yeah, thank you. Before we move on to the recommendation, Councillor Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alison, for that presentation. This sounds terrific. Really interested to hear about all the activity that's going on with different people involved, and clearly the cultural strategy and the whole cultural part of our economy is really important for North Devon. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the sort of criteria that you're going to use to sort of try and whittle down from the large number of submissions down to about 10. It's going to be quite a tough challenge.
Yeah, well, at the moment, all we can look at is suitability and capability, because we're not allowed to look at any specific ideas to what it might be.
Okay.
So in terms of suitability, we have 63. So there are some where they've talked about doing things like murals or trails of small things, which were not within what we asked them to do in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So those can be knocked out to start with. We did tell them what the 7 locations would be. So there's been a couple of cases where people have picked a completely different location, so we can rule them out. So we then looked at, so in terms of suitability, what we were looking at is, can these people read a brief? And are they going to respond in a way which is specific to our area and our themes, rather than being just an off-the-shelf thing that they happen to have in their shed that they want to give us? And then in terms of capability, this is why the town team for culture was so important, because we had representatives from North Devon Arts and other.
Yeah, that's what it's doing. Quickly, it's probably not worth going into huge amounts of detail about how we're going through the full selection process, just because we're in part A and obviously but yeah, just a kind of highlights. But it is fine. But I just we just can't honestly, we don't want to go into details about bids that we've had and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Simon.
Sorry for asking it.
No.
I'm glad Simon has been fully involved in this whole process, which has been complicated.
Yeah.
It is an ongoing one, so maybe
Thank
move
you.
on. Councillor Ricky Knight.
Thank you, Chair. I think this will be easy because it's more a statement than a question, Alison, because I'm also extremely excited by this, but I'm going, indulge me just for a second, just for several seconds. I'm looking at the introduction at 1.2, the purpose of the commission work. On every single one of those, whoopsie, what's that already? Every single one of those points, and over the page, 22, 4.13, not easily reached through traditional procurement routes. And also 4.3, the last statement, not knowing, if you don't know what their work is like. What am I aiming at here? Well, thanks to several people on this council and people elsewhere, there is a mural in Barnstable on the side of the bike shed, which has been remarkably successful. But I wish I'd had you on board when I tried to get this together. But it was a bit of a maverick procedure. I don't think I did it correctly at all, but it was extremely difficult to get the funding. But I believe the artist involved has enhanced the value of that horrible wall exponentially. And if that can be mirrored in other parts of Barnstable and Northern Devon, that would be so thrilling. You know that Sandy Brown, for instance, put this amazing bit of ceramics. It was in Truro, was it? And got into a lot of trouble. It's true for being unpopular with some people, but it's a remarkable piece of art. And so, as I said, it's a statement, Chair. I'm just so thrilled. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever comes of this. Thank you. That's a statement, not a question.
I thought, Councillor Knight, I thought you were going to offer your services and put yourself on a wall with a piano.
I thought I was going to get into trouble for not doing it correctly.
Councillor David Knight.
I just dipped my finger in the arts back in a previous life, and I know how difficult it is. So I would propose we support recommendations.
Chair, I'd second that and just say we know Alison will sort it.
Yeah.
See it sorted.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the recommendation, Councillor Masker.
Thank you. I think it's brilliant. It would be lovely to think that local artists would be I need kind of preferential treatment, but it would be nice to see these projects reflect local artists and that. Sorry.
But we're working on the detailed criteria at the moment, but those 4 points at the beginning will be the basis of it.
Okay, can we move to recommendations? Anybody pause?
David seconded, yeah.
All in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Item 10. Additions.
Hello again, members. This is a report to allocate Section 106 public open space funds to a project, the rear of Tarka Leisure Centre, adjacent to the new long stay car park. So it's a request for £65,000 to construct a new cycle and pedestrian path. So it will connect the existing pathway that runs along the side of the long stay car park, and it will connect up to the back of the sports complex, really, where Falcons Gymnastics Centre is and the all-weather pitches. So the recommendations are that the committee allocates those funds, considers the outcomes of the equality impact assessment summarised in paragraph 6 of the report, and that subject to the two previous recommendations that SNR committee recommend council vary the capital programme by £65,000 and funds are released to deliver that project. Any questions?
Councillor Caroline Lever.
Is there a map?
Well, there is, but I can't understand it.
Is there a map that explains clearly what you're talking about? It's really what I'm asking. Because it would be a fabulous thing to help us understand what you're asking.
It's in our pack.
Yes, there was an appendix to the report.
Because the word understandable as well.
Yes.
Okay, it's fairly straightforward. I would have thought it's there's a just to explain that the map that's in the pack. There's an existing cycling footpath that runs essentially from the kind of Iron Bridge coming across the river along the side of the new long stay car park, and it takes you to the corner of the existing car park that sits alongside Tarka Tennis Centre and the Leisure Centre. The map will provide really, I think the fear was that because people start to look for the shortest route, will go diagonally really from the car park across the grass corner next to the all-weather pitches, so that they can access Falcons Gymnastics facility and the rear of the tennis centre. So that's where the path will go, across that corner. It's quite a high value, but there is a pretty steep gradient from the top of that path because it was all raised due to flooding. So there's that to cope with. A reasonably short the path makes perfect sense if you're a regular user, because there's quite a bit of expected traffic on foot and cycles.
Peter Whitman.
Yes, thanks, Mark. I don't think there's any issue that more sort of public access and footpaths need sorting out around that area. But I know there have been concerns from the ward councillors and the cycling campaign about how that whole junction of the new car park, the recycling facility, and the footpath and cycle network all work together to make sure that there's no conflict. And I just wondered if there is perhaps some scope for agreeing the sort of fine detail of this, maybe with the ward councillors, so that we understand the issues on the ground going forward with it. I guess so. I mean, I think I'm not aware that anyone's actually objecting to the proposed location of this particular bit of path. I mean, that's really what this report is all about. Yes. But I think the conversations about the rest of the site, yes, there's certainly. I mean, rather than getting into the detailed conversation, it would be helpful to maybe have some of those discussions.
This is
just
round 12 ward, is it?
Yes.
Well, Councillor David Nice here from Marlborough.
Yeah, I mean, I support what Councillor Lima has said, because I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of it. And I've been a bit complacent in going down there, but I was only made aware of this kind of 10 days ago. And I've scrutinised the drawing, and the corner of the path is actually 4 metres away from the corner of the fence. We have to move a large bank. So I'd actually suggest we go down there and look at exactly where it's going to be, because obviously 5,000. And I went down to the gym, and I literally was not aware of the volume of foot traffic. Yeah. The minute that new car park is opened, we're going to have people going, I want to walk that way. And if we don't do the right thing exactly in the right place, another factor is I wasn't aware that dirt and mud, we have young people very enthusiastically going and playing football, and they walk straight across from A to B with their boots and straight onto the pitch, which we are responsible for maintaining. And the cost of maintaining that pitch is astronomical, if you excuse the pun. But we need to make really sure we can persuade the enthusiastic people to walk in the right direction. And I think we do need to get down and look at it and make sure it is in the right place, and we can deliver what we can make as best we can to make sure those people are not walking across the mud.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, just to clarify that, although looking after the pitch is expensive, it is more than covered by the income that the pitch generates, which is fairly substantial. But you're absolutely right that they do need looking after, and that really is the driver for this project, is to put that path there to provide a hard standing access for that shortest route that people undoubtedly will start to use.
Am I assuming there's tenders out for this job? Because you've allowed some of money, 65.
There's not tenders out yet, but there will be. Yeah.
And will that could vary accordingly, because it says here not for construction in a bond area. I'm just wondering about the makeup of the footpath itself, because generally construction of footpaths is a lesser amount than what's shown on this detail. So
yeah, I mean the report is an estimate from our senior surveyor, but it is an estimate. But I'm sure it's a well thought out and reasonable estimate.
So would that come back again then, if you know it's
I'm not sure it would need to, once it was proposed.
That was the point I was going to make. I think we need to drill down a little bit into the proposal that's being put forward, because obviously this scheme's been worked up with the council's surveyors and the engineers. And in the officer's view, this is an appropriate route for the footpath. If we're saying it's not an appropriate route for the footpath, then if that route's going to substantially change, then we need to perhaps go back to square one.
Yeah.
Get new drawings drawn up, new surveys, and new engineering input. So I'd like to be quite clear as to what we're now suggesting, because if the route, if we're saying, yeah, it's fine to put £65,000 into a footpath in that area somewhere, but the exact route has to be agreed with the ward member, then chances are we're going to be going back to square one, and there'll be an additional cost to the result.
But this is where a map could be useful with the site plan, so we can actually point at it, because the map that's been provided in the report doesn't give us the overview, which is necessary for us to be able to read.
That's not what the chair asking for, Chairman, is a reflection of the building, where it relates to the building, where it's going around, isn't it? Well, where it links up. That all should ensure.
Councillor David Knight, did you want to come back?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been down there and looked at the route, which is very clear down the side of the wire. But the drawing is actually 4 metres away from the wire, and it proposes moving probably about 30 tonnes of mud bank. So personally, I can't see why we're not putting the path where the mud is. We're moving tons and tons of earth unnecessarily. So that's my comment, if you want to drill into the detail.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask Councillor Norman's here, actually, do you share similar comments?
Yes, David, Councillor Knight shares views, yes.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
And going back to what Ken said, I mean, if we have a site visit with 2 ward councillors to look at this, is there any possibility this can be postponed till January? Is that going to, you say go back to square one, can we put off till January to see that they're in agreement with this? Because I think it's important we do get the support.
I suppose it can. It's I mean, the car park due to open in January. So there is a risk that if we delay too much, that we will, those crowds of people will be parking and starting to walk across that area that you were concerned about, I suppose.
Councillor Knight.
I was led to believe this is actually got to go to planning. So if it's got to go to planning anyway, we are going to actually, we're not going to be an immediate fix, are we? We are going to actually be slightly delayed. And I appreciate that. But however, I was totally unaware of the path and the situation up until about 10 days ago. So could have probably been brought to my attention sooner. Hence, we wouldn't have had this tonight. Sorry, to be a bit abrupt, but
Is it possible to have a meeting with the ward councillors, the other members who wish to go to?
Yeah,
this before Christmas, so it can be automatically put on the agenda for the SNR in January to get it sorted once and for all.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I'm aware that you went to site with.
I've been down about 5 times now in the last week, just to make sure I know what I'm talking about and look at the diagram every which way.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the exact location, and there's a lot of room for manoeuvre with it because it's a reasonably tight space. But or are we saying we want to have a meeting with members and then bring the recommendation back?
That's up to members to decide.
That's
before we decide that, because Councillor Crabb and Councillor Lane wanted this couple of things.
I was only trying to see if there was an administrative thing where you could say that we broadly speaking in favour of this, and if the ward members are then subsequently persuaded of the location of the path, then it can go through, otherwise, as Ken says, it sort of goes back. I'm talking semantics really, but I'm just wondering if there's a way of moving things on a bit, that was all.
Yeah, I agree.
Can
Yeah, Councillor Martin and Councillor.
I just say, I am broadly in agreement with spending that money on a path roughly in that location. But if it's got to come a metre or so this way to actually be in the right place, it is the right path with the stairs and the slope. It's perfectly right, but it might just need to everybody to see, well, actually, it needs to come because the residents or people watching will stand on the mud. You've left mud before you.
Okay. I mean, I'm obviously quite familiar. I mean, I haven't been down there recently, but I know exactly where we're talking about. I would have thought people would, if there's a nice wide tarmac path, they'll walk on that rather than mud.
Especially their trainers. People walking in different directions, wearing the boots. And they get on the pitch.
It's up to members, but I think to move the path a metre here or there, I think practicality and engineers would make that call. But if members want to have that final say, I mean, that's up to members. But
You mentioned 4 metres, but let's be honest, if you're talking about going for a tender, that's not going to happen overnight anyhow. So that's going to come back. It won't get sorted out by the beginning of January anyhow.
Chair, if I may, if members are broadly agreeable to the route that has been described in the plan and as described by Mark, then yeah, go for an approval subject to the exact detail being
release of 106 and
consulted with members.
And if there's any issues, you have to come back again afterwards.
No.
So how are you, Councillor Norman?
Don't know, come back. Yes, Chair.
No.
So I propose then that we release the 106 money subject to the approval of the ward members. How's that?
Yeah.
I make it subject to consultation with the ward.
Exactly.
Ward members can't take the decision. So if you're happy for officers to consult the exact route with ward members, try and reach an agreement, and then take the decision themselves, that's fine. Otherwise, it needs to come back to you again.
What he said.
Just to clarify, though, Ken, if they don't reach agreement, what happens then? That's back to us.
Why couldn't this happen last week?
Come back
I
here.
mean, it's been published for 10 days. It's sorted out before.
Yeah, either it'll have to come back here, or as John just pointed out, full council will have to take a decision to vary the capital programme, so we could wrap it up as part of that.
Right.
And that'll be in January, Chair.
Right, thank you. Councillor Knight, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, can you just repeat what we're voting on then?
It was really good.
Yes, we are voting to, in principle, we're going to release the section 106 funding. We're in favour of that, but we'd like the ward members to negotiate with the officers on the location of the path. And if no agreement is reached, then it will come to full council in January.
Thank you, Ken. All those in favour of the recommendation?
Seconded by
Councillor. Second.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, we're going into part B now, so can I ask,
Just a quick thing, before we go to part B, thinking again, it is probably worth, we're going into detail, just covering off the interest issue before we go into, because it is probably more appropriate, that's done in the public domain. But so is it we're about mentioning locations. So I'm understanding, Councillor, you've been working, your company's been working.
I am but a tiny cog, but I am working for him. He is working for him, and I think you're talking about buying some land from him. But but my influence or whatever is not. The fact that I'm down there knee deep doesn't necessarily mean that I'm affecting strategic.
So there's no direct impact, but
no, I don't get money from
there. Well, there's So I would suggest that that's a non-principal interest that doesn't necessarily that will be disclosed for transparency only. That's fine. Okay. So.
It's Councillor Crab actually declaring an interest in there.
I think so, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't need to leave the room.
No, I just wait for clarification.
We've not moved into part B yet, so there needs to be somebody to move.
I'm moving a party, Kevin.
Okay, all in favour? Thank you.
Hold on, Jamie, while we stop the recording.